I'm 42. Married for 12 years. 2 kids. A mortgage that feels heavier every year. From the outside, we looked boring in a good way, stable, predictable, safe. I used to think that was enough. Before everything blew up, life felt normal. Exhausting, sure, but normal. Work, school runs, dinner, Netflix, repeat. My wife and I weren't wildly in love anymore, but we functioned. We laughed sometimes. We argued about stupid things like dishes and money. Nothing that felt fatal. The gym was supposed to be one of the good changes. Something healthy. Something for us. She'd been feeling insecure after the second pregnancy, and I thought paying for a nice gym membership would help her feel better. Confident. Seen. I even joined too, though I rarely went. I work long hours. She went almost every day. I remember standing at the front desk, credit card in hand, signing us both up for a year. The manager shook my hand, smiled wide, called us a great-looking couple. I felt proud. Like I was doing my job as a husband. At home, she started changing in small ways. New leggings. Makeup just to work out. Showering immediately when she got back. Staying longer than planned. I noticed, but I didn't question. I trusted her. I trusted us. That's the part that hurts the most now. How peaceful my ignorance was. How safe I felt in a life that was already quietly rotting underneath me. I had no idea I was paying for the place where my marriage would start to die. Looking back, the red flags feel obvious in that cruel, hindsight way. At the time, they blended into the noise of everyday life. She started talking about the gym manager a lot. Just casually. His name slipped into conversations the way coworkers' names do. Mark said the new machines are coming next week. Mark adjusted my program. Mark thinks I should focus more on core strength. I didn't even know his last name, and I didn't care to ask. She laughed more. Not with me, just in general. She'd come home energized, almost glowing, while I felt drained from work. Sometimes she'd barely notice me talking, scrolling on her phone instead, smiling at something I couldn't see. I told myself it was good. That she was happier. That this was what supportive husbands were supposed to want. There were other things too. She stopped inviting me to join her workouts. Said it was her time. She guarded her phone in a way she never had before, turning the screen down when I walked by, taking calls in the garage. When I teased her about having a secret boyfriend, she snapped at me, harder than the joke deserved. That should have scared me. Instead, I apologized. I was tired. Overworked. Emotionally lazy, if I'm being honest. Trust felt easier than suspicion. Love felt easier than vigilance. Sometimes at night, lying next to her, I'd feel this vague unease. Like something was off, just slightly. I'd push it down and tell myself marriages go through phases. That not everything needed to be interrogated. I had no idea those small moments were the foundation of something much worse. The doubt didn't arrive all at once. It crept in quietly, like a leak you ignore until the ceiling caves in. One night she fell asleep on the couch with her phone in her hand. That almost never happened. I remember standing there, staring at the screen, telling myself not to be that guy. I wasn't suspicious yet, just curious in the way spouses sometimes are after years together. The phone buzzed. I flinched, like it had caught me doing something wrong. The screen lit up. A message preview. Just one line. Same time tomorrow? Can't stop thinking about today. No name. Just a number. My heart started pounding so hard I thought it might wake her. I didn't unlock the phone. I didn't scroll. I just stood there, frozen, staring at that sentence until the screen went dark again. I told myself 100 explanations in about 10 seconds. Trainer talk. Motivation. Gym culture. I wanted to believe it was harmless so badly it almost hurt. But something shifted inside me that night. A small, ugly seed of doubt took root. After that, I started noticing everything. How she angled her phone away from me. How she smiled while texting, then wiped the expression off her face when she saw me watching. How she'd suddenly forget to mention parts of her day. I hated who I was becoming, this quiet observer, cataloging behaviors, replaying conversations in my head. I hated that I didn't confront her. I hated that I didn't trust her. But most of all, I hated the growing certainty that I was already too late. The real turning point came a week later, and it was stupidly mundane. I was doing laundry. That's it. Folding towels, socks, the boring stuff that makes up adult life. Her gym leggings were inside out, and when I shook them, a small folded receipt fell onto the floor. I almost threw it away without looking. It was from the gym. Dated 2 months back. 0 balance. Complimentary. That didn't make sense. I was paying for 2 full memberships. Auto withdrawal every month. I knew the exact amount because I complained about it every time the bank notification popped up. I stood there holding that receipt, feeling cold spread through my chest. Complimentary how? Promotional? Referral? I tried to rationalize it, but my hands were already shaking. That night, I checked our bank statements. Nothing had changed. I was still paying. Still getting charged. Still funding something I suddenly didn't understand. When she came home, I asked casually, "Hey, did the gym change something with billing?" She barely looked up. "What do you mean?" "I found a receipt. It says complimentary." She paused. Just for a second. But I saw it. That tiny hitch in her breath. "Oh. Yeah. Mark comped a couple months because the machines were broken for a while." Mark. She said it like it was nothing. Like his name didn't now feel like a blade between my ribs. I nodded. Pretended that explanation made sense. Pretended I believed her. That night, lying next to her, I didn't sleep at all. I stared at the ceiling and realized something terrifying. She was lying to me. And she was getting better at it. I couldn't stop thinking about Mark after that night. Every little thing she did started connecting in my head like dots on a dark canvas. How she left work early. For errands. How she was suddenly going to the gym more often. How she always seemed cheerful after texting. All the tiny signs I'd ignored before suddenly screamed at me. I tried to convince myself to wait, to gather proof. I didn't want to be the jealous husband, the paranoid one. But the gnawing pit in my stomach wouldn't let me rest. I started checking her phone when she wasn't around, something I swore I'd never do. I told myself it was just to confirm, just to know if I was imagining it. And then I saw it. Messages. Screenshots even. Photos she'd sent him of herself at the gym, captions that were intimate. Playful. Personal. Not flirty in a normal spouse to trainer way, but like she was showing him a side of herself she never showed me. One text hit me harder than anything else. "Thanks for covering my membership. Can't wait to see you tonight, winky face." I read it 3 times, just staring at the words as if the sentence itself might disappear. My hands were shaking. My throat tight. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to just vanish. I don't know how long I sat there in silence, my heart pounding in my ears. I felt hollow, betrayed in a way I couldn't even name. The person I thought I knew, my wife, was sharing herself, financially and physically, with someone else, and I was the one footing the bill. I almost didn't confront her. I almost deleted the evidence, convinced myself it wasn't real. But something in me snapped that night. I needed to know the truth. Not half-truths. Not excuses. The whole thing. And I knew I'd regret the moment I was about to have. But I needed it anyway. I confronted her the next evening. I waited until the kids were asleep, every nerve in my body screaming at me to just walk away, to let it slide, to protect the fragile illusion of our life. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I laid the phone and the receipts on the kitchen counter. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely point at them. "We need to talk," I said, my voice tighter than I realized. She looked up, confused at first, then panic. That tiny flicker of panic in her eyes hit me like a punch. Is this what I think it is? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. You and Mark? The messages? The complimentary memberships? Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Swallowed. It's not what you think, she said softly, carefully. Not what I think, I echoed, laughter bitter and sharp in my throat. You're sleeping with him. You're my wife, sleeping with him. And I'm paying for it. She started crying then. I didn't even recognize the sound, soft, shaking, guilt-laden. She tried to explain, tried to justify. It's complicated. I didn't mean he makes me feel. I wasn't getting anything at home. I just... Every word was a dagger. I couldn't process her reasoning. My mind was a hurricane of disbelief and rage. I yelled. She cried harder. She tried to hug me, but I recoiled. I couldn't. My stomach twisted. My chest ached. I felt sick, humiliated, and helpless. I couldn't comprehend how our life had twisted into this. And the worst part? I had been paying for it, literally funding the betrayal. Every single month. We ended the night in silence, a heavy, suffocating silence. Neither of us slept. And I realized, with a clarity that scared me, that nothing would ever be the same. The next few days were hell. I was a walking storm of anger, hurt, and confusion. Every memory, every little shared joke, every quiet moment at home suddenly felt like a lie. I kept replaying her texts in my head, imagining her laughing with him, touching him, thanking him for things I'd paid for. I couldn't look at her the same way. Every glance, every word, every smile felt like a trap. And yet, I still loved her, or at least the idea of her. That made it worse. She begged for forgiveness. She said it was a mistake. She claimed it was about her insecurities, that she felt invisible, that he made her feel desirable. I listened, more out of exhaustion than empathy. But every word she spoke drilled deeper into my chest. Family life didn't pause. The kids still needed breakfast, school, bedtime stories. I smiled at them, packed lunches, went to work, all while carrying this leaden weight of betrayal. I tried to avoid her, but we were trapped in the same house, navigating shared spaces like strangers in parallel universes. Friends noticed I was distant. I lied. Stress at work, I said. Nobody needed to know the intimate hell I was living. Sleep became impossible. I started waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, stomach churning. I thought about confronting her again, about leaving, about screaming at him. But each option terrified me. The humiliation, it stayed with me. I kept thinking, how could I be so blind? How could I not see this coming? And through it all, one thought haunted me most. I had been paying for her affair. Every month, every dollar, unknowingly contributing to my own heartbreak. Eventually, I decided I had to talk to Mark. I don't know what I was hoping for: closure? Revenge? Just to see him squirm? I drove to the gym one evening, my hands gripping the steering wheel until they hurt. I could feel my pulse hammering in my temples. When I walked in, he was behind the front desk, smiling that same fake friendly smile he used when I signed us up. Hey man, I started, trying to sound casual. My voice cracked anyway. Can we talk somewhere private? He followed me to an empty corner of the gym. And then I saw it, his calm, confident demeanor, like he knew exactly what he'd done. I told him I knew everything. I even mentioned the receipts. How I'd been paying for their arrangement. He didn't apologize. Not at first. Just shrugged. Said, I like your wife. She's fun. You know how it is. I felt my stomach drop. My hands shook. The anger, humiliation, and disbelief collided in a wave that nearly knocked me off my feet. I screamed at him, cursed him, told him he was a leech, that he had no idea what he was doing to a family. He finally smirked, then walked away, leaving me standing there, heart racing, face hot, powerless. I realized then that there was no one to blame but her, and me. For trusting blindly. For paying without questioning. For thinking our life was safe. I drove home in silence, the car feeling like it had swallowed me whole. I didn't know how I would face her, or if I wanted to. But one thing was clear, nothing would ever be the same. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial. Physical. Total. And I felt trapped inside the wreckage. When I got home, the air between us was thick, almost unbreathable. I didn't speak at first. I just watched her move around the kitchen, making herself a glass of water like everything was normal. Like nothing had happened. I finally said it, low and trembling. You've been sleeping with him. And I've been paying for it. Every month. Do you even understand how that feels? She froze. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I saw fear in them, not of me, but of what she'd done. I didn't think it mattered like that, she whispered. I couldn't process the casualness of that. She didn't think it mattered. I thought we were building a life together, not this arrangement she could dismiss with a shrug. We argued for hours. I yelled. She cried. She begged. I accused. I raged. I accused again. It was exhausting, humiliating, surreal. I hated the version of myself that shouted things I'd never imagined saying. She tried to explain it away with, "It's just feelings." And, "He makes me feel alive." I couldn't hear it. I couldn't stomach the words. They sounded like poison. I wanted to leave, to throw her out, to disappear. But I stayed, trapped by responsibility, by kids, by the lingering love I couldn't fully abandon. That night, we slept in separate rooms. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling both hollow and furious. I realized something devastating. I had no control anymore. Not over her. Not over my home. Not even over my own peace of mind. And I knew that even if she stopped tomorrow, even if Mark vanished, the trust was gone. Burned to ash. I didn't know how to live in the same house with someone who had done this. But I had to. For now, days turned into weeks, and the tension didn't ease. I went through the motions, work, kids, bills, but every interaction with her felt loaded, like walking on cracked ice that could break at any second. I hated that I still looked for glimpses of the woman I loved beneath all the deceit. She tried to make amends in small ways, cooking dinners I didn't ask for, leaving little notes, being affectionate. But it felt hollow. I couldn't touch her without thinking of him. I couldn't talk without hearing their messages in my head. I also discovered another layer of betrayal. She'd convinced the gym to keep comping her membership longer than she admitted. I dug through statements and receipts. Months I'd been paying full price while she quietly got free access, and he knew. That cut deeper than the affair itself. It wasn't just emotional, it was calculated, manipulative. She had exploited my trust in the most basic way, financially. I started withdrawing from friends. I couldn't explain why I was angry, humiliated, and depressed without sounding like a crazy husband. People would have told me to communicate, or forgive. But how could I communicate with someone who had built a secret life in our home? I cried alone at night. Cried over lost years, over my own blind trust, over the life I thought we had. Sometimes I imagined leaving, packing a bag and disappearing, just to reclaim some shred of control. But I stayed. The house felt like a trap. Every object, every routine, every shared meal reminded me that our foundation had cracked, and I wasn't sure it could ever support us again. I was living in the shadow of betrayal, watching my own life unravel slowly, piece by piece. At some point, I realized the betrayal wasn't just about her or Mark, it was about me, too. About how complacent I'd become, how blind I'd been, how I'd equated stability with love. I remembered the early days of our marriage, the way she used to light up around me, how we'd laugh until our stomachs hurt. And I realized I hadn't really seen her in years, not really. I'd been paying bills, keeping routines, checking boxes. I hadn't been present. That thought made the anger sting even more. How dare she do this when I was trying to keep a life together? And yet, how had I failed her enough to make her look elsewhere? I tried therapy, solo at first. Tried talking to someone about how to navigate the emotions, the humiliation, the financial betrayal. I didn't talk about Mark by name. I couldn't. I didn't want to give him space in my own story. But I admitted the hurt, the rage, the confusion, and slowly, I started putting words to feelings I hadn't even let myself feel before. At home, nothing changed outwardly. She kept apologizing. I kept nodding. But the invisible line between us was permanent. Every conversation, every touch, every shared glance reminded me that she had broken something unfixable. I tried to imagine a future where we could rebuild trust. I honestly tried. But every time I pictured it, the image flickered, distorted by betrayal and the knowledge that she had already shared parts of herself that I would never reclaim. I realized, painfully, that some things can't be undone. Some debts aren't just financial, they're emotional, spiritual, and lasting. And I had been left holding both. It was a truth I wasn't sure I'd ever fully accept. Eventually, I had to decide what to do with the marriage itself. Separation felt inevitable, but leaving wasn't simple. Kids, mortgage, shared history, it wasn't just a breakup. It was dismantling an entire life we built. We tried. Space. Separate bedrooms. Separate schedules. Minimal conversation. But even that didn't help. Being in the same house felt like rubbing salt into a wound that refused to close. Every time she laughed, every time she smiled, I wondered if it was at me, at us, at the years I'd unknowingly paid for her affair. I considered counseling together, but the thought of sitting across from her and hearing explanations I'd already rejected felt unbearable. How do you rebuild trust after someone not only betrayed you emotionally and physically, but financially, too? I found myself fantasizing about revenge, which scared me. Not physically, never physically, but I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. The guilt. The humiliation. And yet, part of me just wanted to vanish, to disappear and leave all the pain behind. I noticed subtle changes in myself. I didn't laugh as much. I didn't trust coworkers, friends, or even casual acquaintances the same way. I became hyper-aware of deception everywhere, questioning intentions, reading between every line. And the kids. God, the kids. They didn't know anything, but I could see the subtle tension when she and I argued, when our eyes met and silently screamed. I realized betrayal doesn't just hurt the couple, it creeps into the corners of the entire household, quietly, invisibly, leaving marks that take years to fade. By now, the anger and heartbreak had settled into a constant, simmering ache. A dull reminder that some choices, once made, can never be erased. Eventually, I confronted the truth I'd been avoiding. Our marriage wasn't going to survive, at least not the way it had been. I loved her, yes, but love wasn't enough anymore. Not after the betrayal, not after the lies, not after realizing I had been paying for something I never signed up for emotionally. We started discussing separation seriously. It wasn't explosive, more resigned than anything. A mutual acknowledgement that something fundamental had shifted and couldn't be fixed. I couldn't say I wasn't relieved in some twisted way. Relief mixed with heartbreak is one of the cruelest feelings. The kids remained the hardest part. I wanted to shield them from the truth, from the humiliation, from the bitterness that had seeped into our home. But I also knew that pretending everything was normal was toxic too. I balanced explanations carefully, words chosen to protect them without lying outright. Financially, I had to recalculate everything. The mortgage, the accounts, even the gym membership itself, it had been a small but constant reminder of betrayal. I closed the accounts she had exploited, cut ties with the gym, and faced the bitter reality that I had been complicit, in part, by ignoring the red flags and blindly trusting. I started rebuilding my life slowly, painfully. Therapy, long walks, small routines that reminded me I existed outside of the chaos she had caused. I learned to sleep alone again, to trust myself again, to reclaim the part of me that had been buried under disbelief and anger. And yet, a small, persistent ache never left. The image of them together, the knowledge of what I had unknowingly funded, lingered. It became part of me, part of my story, a scar that no apology could erase. Some nights, I still lie awake wondering how we got here, and whether I'll ever truly forgive, not her, not Mark, but myself for believing that trust alone could protect a marriage. Months passed. The separation became official, and I moved into a small apartment nearby. Quiet, impersonal, but mine. I felt both liberated and hollow at the same time. The house that once held our life, our children, our routines, our memories, was now hers, and it burned me every time I drove past it. I saw her less frequently, only for pickups, drop-offs, and necessary conversations. Every interaction was tense, polite, careful. No laughter, no warmth, just the ghost of what had been. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing at her, hoping to see a flicker of the woman I fell in love with. Most times I didn't. Financially, I recovered slowly. Selling some shared assets, recalculating budgets, separating accounts, it felt like reclaiming ownership over my own life, piece by piece. But money couldn't erase the humiliation, the emotional betrayal, or the long nights wondering if she'd ever truly loved me. The kids were adjusting, thank God, though they sensed the tension, the absence of normalcy. I tried to shield them from details, but they always notice more than you think. I realized that the consequences of infidelity ripple further than just the adults involved. Sometimes I think about Mark, the gym manager who smiled, took advantage, and knew exactly what he was doing. I don't want revenge anymore, not really. I want closure, peace, a way to bury this chapter without it haunting me every time I look in a mirror. But the truth is, some chapters don't end neatly. Some scars stay visible, some lessons are bitter, and some betrayals linger like smoke long after the fire has died down. I'm learning to live with it, to navigate a world reshaped by someone else's choices, and my own failure to see the signs sooner. And I still feel the sting every time I think about how I paid for my own heartbreak. It's been nearly a year since the separation. Life has a new rhythm, quieter, lonelier, but also mine. I've started dating again, cautiously, tentatively. Every connection carries a shadow of mistrust I didn't have before. Every smile from someone new reminds me how easily trust can be exploited. I've learned some hard truths about myself. About blind faith, about ignoring red flags, about mistaking stability for love. I've learned that anger and heartbreak can coexist with love, that you can still care about someone who's caused you unimaginable pain. That sometimes, the person you trusted most is the one who will wound you deepest. I still talk to my therapist regularly. It helps to untangle the mess of feelings that never quite settle. I journal, I run, I rebuild routines I had neglected. I'm reclaiming my sense of self, brick by brick. The kids are adjusting. They still love their mother, and they still love me. I try to make our time together normal, to shield them from the wreckage of adult mistakes. But I know that some memory of this betrayal will always linger in their subconscious, and that guilt sometimes eats at me more than anything she did. And sometimes, in the quiet, I replay moments, the receipts, the texts, the lies. I still feel a flicker of rage, a twinge of humiliation, but it's quieter now, less raw. I write this not for pity or advice, but because it helps to say it aloud somewhere anonymous. Life goes on, painfully and imperfectly. Trust can break. People can betray you. And sometimes, heartbreak comes with a price tag, one you didn't know you were paying. I survived, I think. But I carry the lessons, the scars, and the memory of a marriage I thought was safe, only to discover how fragile it really was.